Hello everybody, and welcome to this introduction to native woodlands in Ireland. Woodlands are wonderful habitats, filled with unique and specialised woodland animals, birds, insects and plants. But in spite of how amazing these habitats are for biodiversity, native woodlands in Ireland only cover about 2% of the land, a tiny amount. Fly over Ireland and you'll see very little native woodland. So let's learn a little bit more about this precious Irish habitat. Native woodlands, as the name implies, are comprised of native tree species. In contrast, something like conifer plantations are planted with non-native tree species like Sitka spruce. Irish native woodlands are mostly made up of broadleaf tree species. Broadleaf trees have flat leaves like oak and ash leaves. The other general type of trees are conifers, which have needle or scale-like leaves, like the species of trees that we generally use for Christmas trees. Native conifer woodlands in Ireland are very rare. The best example is probably the yew wood on the Muckross Peninsula in Killarney National Park. So let's take a closer look at the type of native woodlands we found in Ireland. Woodlands in Ireland can be grouped into major categories. Now within each of these major categories, there are many more associated subtypes of woodlands. But we'll just look at the four main types in this presentation. You can always look up the subtypes yourself. Classification of woodlands is based on the dominant tree and herb species making up the woodland. This is all laid out in the classification of native woodlands in Ireland and its application to native woodland management, which is freely available online for you to download and check out. As mentioned, classifications of woodlands is based on the dominant tree and herb species. Herb here refers to herbaceous plant, which is defined as a small plant without a woody stem. The term is to contrast with shrubs and trees, which do possess a woody stem. So let's have a look at the four main types of native woodland. First up is sessile oak woodrush woodland. These woodlands are characterized by a dominance of oak, mostly sessile oak, Quercus petrea, but sometimes pedunculate oak, Quercus robur. The herb layer is usually species poor and is often dominated by woodrush, Lazula sylvatica, and with abundant ferns. The woodlands are commonest in upland areas with relatively poor but well-drained acidic soil. Where these woodlands occur in the very humid western regions of Ireland, the trees are covered with ferns and mosses and are sometimes referred to as Ireland's rainforests. So let's look at the dominant tree characterizing this woodland, the sessile oak. You may well recognize oak trees. They produce a very recognizable seed called an acorn. In Ireland, we have two native oak trees, the sessile oak and the pedunculate oak. A good way to learn how to identify sessile oak is to look at the differences between sessile and pedunculate oak. Both these species of oak have leaves that are longer than they are wide, dark green, lobed, with an undulate margin. In sessile oak, the leaves have a long leaf stalk, while pedunculate oak leaves have almost no stalk. The acorns are the opposite. Sessile acorns don't have a stalk, but pedunculate acorns have a long stalk. The flowers of sessile oak are monoecious, meaning that male and female flowers are found on the same tree. Male flowers are green catkins. A catkin is a spike with lots of little flowers that have very small or no petals. The female flowers are tiny clusters of bracts, which are modified leaves, and they resemble red flower buds. After pollination by wind, female flowers develop into acorns. In winter, oak trees will often still have old leaves attached to the twigs, which can help you identify them. The leaf buds are also used in identification. For oak trees, look for rounded buds which are in clusters at the end of the branch tip. Next up, let's look at the ash ivy woodland type. These are found on the more fertile lowland soils of the Midlands and are dominated by ash and hazel. The woodlands generally have a more diverse ground flora, and in the spring, the woodland floor can be awash with colour, with white wood anemones, blue bluebells, and yellow lesser celandine, flowering before the leaves of the tree shade the sunlight out. So let's look at the tree characterizing these woodlands, the ash, Fraxinus excelsior. Ash has compound leaves. In contrast to a single leaf, the compound leaf has a middle vein to which leaflets are attached. The ash compound leaf typically has 3 to 6 opposite pairs of light green oval leaflets, and there is an additional singular terminal leaflet at the end. The ash flowers are dioecious, meaning that male and female flowers typically grow on different trees. Although a single tree may have male and female flowers on different branches. Both male and female flowers are purple, and they appear before the leaves in the spring. They grow in spiked clusters at the tips of the twigs. The female flowers are pollinated by wind and developed into winged fruits called keys in the late summer and autumn. Ash is one of the easier trees to ID in winter. Look out for these handsome black buds and clusters of brown seeds. Another characteristic of ash is that the leaves fall when they are still green, so ash trees in winter won't have any brown leaves still clinging to them. The alder meadowsweet woodland type is found on wetter soils, particularly around lake shores and in waterlogged hollows. The woodlands are dominated by alder and also contain a variety of other tree species, sometimes with ash and often with grey willow. Alder lets quite a lot of sunlight reach the woodland floor, so these woodlands have a lush woodland flora full of moisture-loving herbs like meadowsweet. How to identify alder? Alnus glutinosa. The leaves of alder are dark green, racket-shaped and leathery, with a serrated edge. The leaf tip is never pointed and is often indented. The flowers are on catkins. The female catkins are green and oval-shaped, while the male catkins are long and turn yellow as they ripen. Once pollinated by wind, the female catkins gradually become woody and appear as tiny cone-like fruits. They open up to release their seeds, which are dispersed by wind and water. In winter, look out for club-shaped leaf buds, which are this lovely purple color. You'll also see the female catkins that look like little brown cones. These stay on the tree all year round. The last woodland type we'll look at is downy birch purple moorgrass woodland. This type of woodland is relatively species poor and colonizes degraded or intact raised bogs and peaty hollows. The woodlands are dominated by birch and often have few other tree or shrub species, although locally Scots pine might be abundant. The herb layer is dominated by purple moorgrass. Let's look at identifying downy birch, Betula pubescens. Downy birch has triangular-shaped leaves with a rounded base. The leaf stalk has very fine, soft hairs. The leaves have a serrated edge, and tree bark is an identifying feature. It's a grey-white colour. Flowers of downy birch are monoecious, so both male and female catkins are found on the same tree. Male catkins are long and yellow-brown in colour. They hang at the tips of shoots like lamb's tails, while the female catkins are much smaller, short and bright green. Pollination is by wind, and the female catkins thicken and change colour to a dark crimson. And masses of tiny seeds are born in the autumn and dispersed by the wind. Downy birch can be identified in winter by its bark, which is grey-white all year round, and the twigs are softly hairy to the touch. So you know how to identify the 4 main types of trees used to classify our native forests. Now these trees are not just found in forests. You can find them in gardens and parks, as standalone trees. So have a look for them next time you're out and about, in winter and in summer. And there are many more trees to learn how to identify, both in forests, gardens, and local parks. There are many websites that can help you, or you can download an app for your phone. The National Biodiversity Data Center sells these swatches, which are a great size to carry in your pocket or bag. If you want to get a bit more serious about identifying trees, then you might want to invest in a good identification book. As always, if there's a tree that you spot and need help identifying, we're here to help. Happy trails!